what's happening with the ticket demand and what is it? Does it mean something? In my view, it means something. Um, when we look at other kinds of activity related to the WWE and AEW products, as we've discussed a moment ago, there's media activity that you can look at, YouTube views. In a little while, we're going to discuss TV ratings, right? WWE, in terms of total viewership, is doing far better, far ahead of AEW, what AEW has ever really come close to. SmackDown is viewed by about 2 million viewers, a little bit more than 2 million viewers every week. Uh, Raw, although it did just do its lowest 18-49 viewership ever this past Monday, still being viewed by about 1.5, 1.6 million viewers every week. AEW has never done more than what it did for its debut, which is 1.4 million viewers total. Now, in the demo, that skews old. You know, the total viewership, linear TV viewing in general skews old. And if we look at the YouTube views, which we just did a moment ago, and I guess we can just put that on the screen if I'm going to mention it, it's mostly WWE, and WWE has more content, right? They have, as far as flagship core hours, they have 5 of those plus NXT, which would make for 7. AEW has just 3 hours to WWE's, if we just count Raw and SmackDown, 5. So that maybe that's a factor too, just volume of content here in what comprises this list. But there is some AEW here. There's what, out of 20, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 AEW videos, 6 out of 20. So that's a little over a quarter, right? Yeah. In 18-49, Raw and Dynamite are pretty close. Raw is consistently higher than Dynamite in the same week, with the exception of 2 weeks in September. Raw is disadvantaged by going against very strong competition right now in terms of Monday Night Football. Dynamite does not go against something quite so strong, as people will be quick to tell me, remind me of. But in many ways, these products, in terms of media consumption among consumers, wrestling fans, is becoming comparable. Maybe not among older people, but among younger and middle-aged adults, appears to be getting quite comparable, with WWE still decisively ahead. In this measurement now, finally, this is more comparable. But the difference I want to point out in terms of media consumption is media consumption doesn't cost you much of anything. You don't have to, if you have cable, you're probably not keeping or getting rid of cable based on wrestling alone. You're not just getting it for the wrestling, probably, in the cases of most people, right? I might be the exception there. I'm probably not a Sling subscriber if wrestling is an internet only product. But that's not the case for most people, I would think, who are watching wrestling. Likewise for consumption of digital and social content. Yes, you probably have to pay some sort of money to have access to the internet, either or both, through your home internet and your cell phone provider. But that's an expense that you would probably bear regardless of whether or not you cared about wrestling. So that's an essentially free experience as well. What's not a free experience is going to a live event where there's a lot more friction involved, both in terms of the money that I have to pay for it, specifically, directly, because I want to have this experience. I have to pay, average ticket price is about $55, something in that neighborhood. I have to pay that money per person to go there. Then I got to figure out a way to transport my body down there to the venue. I might have, if I'm driving a personally owned vehicle, I got to figure out some place to park, which is going to cost me something as well. Then I got to go in the venue. They want to charge me like $8 for a pretzel. So it's a very expensive experience, and there's a direct cost to it for me as a consumer if I want to have that experience. And in that, I think we're seeing even more comparable measures here between WWE and AEW. UBS Arena is just one data point, but it's an interesting data point. It's a meaningful, I should say, data point. You could put a chapter in a book on branding about what's happening here. In that, there's really no reason why WWE should be beaten in even one instance like that. And when you consider the the domination of the market that W has had on the wrestling space between the years of 2001 and 2019. When you consider the resources that they have, the legacy that they have, that a company that's been around for a little over 2 years is able to do this. And the question is, the point has been raised to me, and I believe this is something that W executives are saying in response to questions about what's happening with AEW in comparison to WB. That, look, sure, AEW can capture a limited audience in a relatively quick period of time, and they may be a very loyal and passionate audience, but that's going to be a limited audience, and it's only WWE, and they can do this, by the way, by having a more edgy product, a more violent product, blood and guts and things of that nature. Got Nick Gage out there slicing people's heads with pizza cutters while Domino's is trying to sell pizza on the other screen. But it's WWE, which is more of a family product, TV PG. That's the kind of product that's going to have the widest appeal. There is this belief that I think Vince McMahon has, and people who align with Vince McMahon have, that there are these two cohorts of people in the total available market for wrestling or Vince McMahon sports entertainment. And there are two cohorts, and one of these cohorts is more dismissible. They're the hardcore fan who will always be around, and you don't really need to listen to them.
That's good for WWE. It created controversy, and it was a gesture by some, a vocal minority, in terms of not liking the creative. Santa Claus didn't come for that pay-per-view, and so that's really what that was for them. But it's like someone who watches our television show or things of that nature, and the baby face, as we call them, does not win. And they say, I'm never going to watch this ever again. Well, I know that person is going to be glued to the television next week. It's the same here. We saw no decline whatsoever in any of that. It created controversy, and that was really good for us.
They have this taste that doesn't really align with our taste, or at least our belief about what the widest possible audience will buy. They're always going to buy, so no need to cater too much to them. And maybe we even did with NXT for a bit, Black and Gold era. But no need to take them too seriously. They'll boo Roman Reigns and John Cena and things like that, but they'll never stop buying the product that they love. Meanwhile, there's this larger audience that has a different, more common and normal taste that we need to appeal to capture the widest possible market. I think that's roughly the belief. It's a belief that many people throughout the business have, not just in WWE. I think that is, in another era, was a more relevant, more true description of how the economics of the business work. Over time, that has become less true. Not completely untrue today, but less true. Less totally accurate about how the business is working. I don't buy, though, for one thing, this idea that you can't create a product that satisfies both of those cohorts. As if it's just not possible to make a TV product that the hardcore fans will like and the casual fans will also like. It just can't be done. I think that's not the case. Or it's certainly not the case to the extent that many people in power in the professional wrestling business assume. In fact, I would go so far as to argue that a lot of your hardcore fans have tuned out and turned off your product and stopped buying your product, WWE's product, that is. Why do I think that? Well, ticket sales have been down. Merchandise sales went down from 2016 to 2020, including 2019 before the pandemic. Network subscribers stalled during that period. Google web search went on a really. I was looking at the R squared. Let's get deep into the math here. I was looking at the R squared over the last 4 years or so. It's like a 21% decline each year. In like 3 out of the 4 years, it's astonishing how consistent the decline is in web search. For what that's worth, whatever you want to believe or accept that's reflective of. And so I think the idea that like you can dismiss what the hardcore fan really thinks, but and you never have to really care about what they think because they're always going to stick around. Hey, I think they've turned off. And in lieu of consuming WWE, if they're consuming any wrestling at all at this point, a lot of that group of people have turned on AEW, and AEW has been able to capture a group of people. This is not entirely their audience, but a group of people who are not satisfied with WWE. I'm sure there are people who enjoy WWE and enjoy AEW, but I don't know that's even most of the audience. Go ahead.
Would you argue that this hardcore fan base is that same fan base that tried to get behind Rusev in WWE and Bryan Danielson in WWE and CM Punk and then Zack Ryder and they put like they wanted these guys to be stars. Hey, listen to us, WWE, and WWE didn't listen. In a lot of cases. I mean, Danielson and Punk were stars, but not to the extent that I think the crowd wanted them to be. And now here they're getting their wish for most of these guys in AEW.
I think that's roughly it, and it's probably more fair or maybe more accurate to talk about this in terms of a sentiment rather than people. I think individual fans their tastes can change over time, but and they may be on different areas in the continuum as far as having more of the sentiment or less of the sentiment. But yeah, I think there's been a lot of investment in certain personalities who then WWE did not capitalize on that investment. Emotional investment in various personalities, and just the way that they've gone about things, such as pushing Roman Reigns. Not that Roman Reigns shouldn't be pushed. Not that Roman Reigns is not a very talented and marketable personality and talent, but the way that it was done. It's not just that isolated case. You can't really separate the parts of everything that's happened in WWE history over the last 7 to 10 years. It's all part of this whole story of combat between WWE's fan base, or at least a portion of them, a certain sentiment within that fan base, and the people, or really the person in power behind WWE Creative, who did not feel respected, felt that that contempt was held for them, and said, all right, you're going to push this guy? Well, F you. No, we're not going to accept him. It's all part of this whole dynamic of tension between WWE's fan base over the last 10 years and what the man behind WWE wants, and the feeling of tension between them.